the 21st century, in a middle-income country like Ghana, senior high school students who are being nurtured to grow into forward-thinking and problem solvers have no toilet in their schools. They are defecating in polythene bags, swinging, I'll tell you what that means, and disposing them off in not so far away bushes. From where do they learn the art of cleanliness to help solve our filth problem as leaders of the country's future? Let me not describe the kind of food with which they are being fed and the environment in which the food is being prepared. Also, wild, trained, heavily built men are bullying and butchering people off their properties, killing some in the process while government's lands are being sold like kilewole. The problems are enormous indeed. And are we solving them as quickly as we should? Well, how can we, when the nation is still entangled in the web of political vigilantism and partisan politics, cripple every single move towards development? In the end, the chorus is predictable, and no one seems to know who is telling the truth. Whilst the president goes around begging for support to deal with political vigilantism and corruption, critical questions remain unanswered as to whether or not the NPP administration led us into a bond whose administrative charges alone cost 80 million cedis as part of a total cost of more than 177 million, 25% of the 700 million raised. How do talking about these make the situation any better? Well, the acknowledgement of a problem and brainstorming is the best way to solutions, even if it's tariffs. My panelists will help me out as we toss the questions around in an intellectual discourse. Let's see if we can incite your thoughts towards demanding your pound of flesh from state authorities. So what are we talking about today? Today we'll be looking at schools without toilets, the land guard menace, cheap sale of state lands, and the energy bond, especially the responses so far. We'll look at the NDC leadership and cracks within the party. We'll look at the president's tour seeking support. My guests today are Johnny Beresford-Hughes, host of New Day at the MJ Group. Johnny, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Gifty.
And also here in the studio with me is Ebo JB. He is a blogger and a media analyst. You're welcome as well.
Thank you.
My name is Gifty Andopia. This is Editors Forum. And so I'm going to start asking my panelists what their biggest stories of the week or biggest story of the week has been, and then we'll start talking about the land guard menace. Let me start with you, Mr. Jebi. What has been your biggest story for the week?
Well, my biggest story, I think we in the media haven't given it much prominence or mention, is the Veterans Day thing. And as you can see, Mr. Hughes here has a puppy on. I mean, this is a big event. Right. Okay, and I think we as a nation or as a people really need to look at this issue in its grand style from Second World War, as you know, and our efforts in fighting wars and representation in the UN and all of that.
You'd rather we look also at how the veterans are living. I mean, those who are alive.
Exactly.
Are living.
And if we give it that prominence, if we give it that attention, he happens to be a barracks boy, so he has the puppy on. But it's something that across the globe.
Why is your puppy, by the way?
You see, that's the
because we've not made noise about it. So you forgot yours.
It's something that I was just discussing with Johnny here before we came on air that it's something that I think we should have given it more prominence than we have as a nation. Right. And so, that's my big thing.
That's for you, that's the biggest, that would have been the biggest story of the week. What about you, Johnny?
Mine will be the tour of the president. Okay. And I followed keenly the president touring the entire nation. I think that the tour of the Greater Accra region is particularly important because you remember that the Accra Metropolitan Assembly at the Manchagbona and some chiefs of the English area gave him the name or the title Ni Kwaku or Kujiaman the First. And he says that in the next 4 years, he's going to ensure that the city of Accra is the cleanest before he leaves office.
Okay, so that's something that we'll be talking about. Now find out from you whether or not it met your expectation.
And I didn't hear him talk largely about that, same when he went to Joss Bond's place and he spoke about it. So I want to find out because I have an interest there.
Okay, we'll see how that goes. We'll get some time for that topic as well. But here at JoyNews, we have done a comprehensive hour-and-a-half documentary on land gas and their activities. We've highlighted the issue throughout this month as well. But while we are hopeful of a solution, we understand that a committee has been created to look into the issue of land guard related terrorism. Have a look at excerpt of the documentary, and then when we come back, what happened last week as well in Kaswa relating to land gas, and then what the Lands Minister John Peter Meo has to say.
There's a sound warning that I'm giving to people who are encroaching on government vested lands, that those people, the law will not forgive them.
It's a whole mess. You are paying for a legitimate document, but paying more than the government approved fees.
If you collude with the grantor or the grantees, all the parties around, and everybody is prepared to lie. And of course, the commission can go into their minds to find out whether they are lying or not.
Kumasi, the capital of the Ashanti Kingdom, is considered by many as the region with the best organized chieftaincy institution in the country. It is expected that administering over lands in the Ashanti region is carried out with little controversy. Sadly though, that is not the case. Land management in the region comes with its own problems. The Asantehene Otumfuo Osei II in July 2017 sacked the secretary of the Land Secretariat at Menchia Palace for illegally disposing of portion of the stool land to a private developer. Then in the same month of July, Nana Kofi Adade, aka Nana Solo, Otumfuo Osei II's Palanquin chief, was attacked with cutlasses and guns at Tabre in the Krimanwa-Beja district of the Ashanti region. Menchia has since appointed Apejahene Oheneba Owusu Efriye IV as a replacement to manage lands in the Ashanti region to prevent some of these criminal dealings at the highly revered palace. Clause 3 of Article 267 of the Constitution states that
there shall be no disposition of any stool land unless the Lands Commission within the region within which the land is situated has certified that the disposition or development is consistent with the development plan drawn up or approved by the planning authority of the area concerned.
This particular provision in the law has been flouted by a good number of people in all 10 regions of the country. Multinational and local companies have, in most cases, succeeded in buying their way out to put up facilities illegally. That, according to the regent of Aketinche, David Nicholse, only gives credence to perception of corruption in the public land administration system.
Based on my due diligence and my research, this is what is happening. And some people have broken the law. They have to face the bullet. And I think that the Lands Commission needs to be investigated on this particular issue because they don't have the rights. The Lands Commission have no mandate under the law to dispose of stool properties. They have no mandate. And then when I don't want to talk, but I have had my share of exchanges with them. And I have always made my point to the extent that somebody can even tell you that, yeah, we can use this article and use this article. Any document you bring here will not sign. They should try it and see.
The system just doesn't work.
Yeah, one who said, boys, Nikita, second idea, Moba. And to be the mean who's I'm saying, no, second idea, the mean to mention, and the man is a major police station.
Guards stormed our home at around 7 p.m. They came in with their knives and cutlasses.
We all got scared and ran out of the house. I rushed to the police station to report the case, but I had to stay there for over an hour. No one attended to us. The land guards attacked everyone in the house. They butchered my dad.
1.5 hour cry. Until after 1.5 hour, hey, police for them, pay me, and I want a police for not bonus here and there. Driver, and so board driver, and if you want to answer me, I'm can say no more free empty and almost free patrol team the cano. Bear 2-3 minutes, na patrol team can be do. And on my 4 cano, and on Monday be do us. Yeah, but I know myself, matter me papa the corridor. Make catch almost a police in Panko, my young boys because say on best on me journey the NT. The
President has made a point declaration on how to deal with the land guard issue. It falls within your remit as the lands minister. Are you going to give it similar approach as we are giving to the issue of Galamsey?
The president has put up a committee together who are seriously working on that. You know, the land guard issue has to do more of a security issues, has a lot of security concerns. So it's being handled, and the national security is in charge, and I think measures are being put in place to address it. From our perspective, we are looking at the policy aspect of it to make sure that it doesn't happen. What do you need to do to make sure that it doesn't happen? What are the causes of the Galamseys? Yes, it's happening, and so that is why we begin to address it from the land administration perspective. For the issue which is occurring already, those occurrences will be looked at in terms of the security issues, which is strongly being, addressed by the committee put together.
And when should we expect this committee to come out with?
No, I think the committee is working, and I'm aware that they have even deployed some intelligence around to gather some information. So the committee is seriously on ground. Yeah.
John Peter Meu there, he's the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources there, speaking about how they intend to deal with this problem. But of course, not everybody is excited about setting up of committees. People are actually tired of it because they don't really get to see what they believe is tangible results from works of such committees. Let me find out from my panelists what they think. Let me start with you, Johnny. Do you have any personal experiences with land guards?
I do. I mean, a very sad one indeed. I'm sure many young people like myself who are ambitious to want to, start something, set up a legacy and all of that. My late father, bless his soul, it got so precarious to the point that he told me to let it go. I bought a land for 8,000 Ghana cedis at Bawe. It turned out that the land was sold to 3 other people.
Wow.
But we did a title search at the Lands Commission.
And it was not sold.
Exactly. And so then it became very worrying that, well, you would have a land of this nature sold to one person, sold to another, sold to another, sold to another. And the laws are clear that no land must be sold or should be sold without the say-so of the Lands Commission. They must be part of the negotiation process. Yeah. And I don't think I am alone. There are so many other young people in this very situation. What's worrying is that we started off with digging fee, and then now it's got into roofing fee.
Roofing fee.
Exactly. So before you buy the land, you have the documents. Before you get onto your plot, they will ask you for exactly. If you don't pay, each cost of block you mount, they will just rake it down. Now, if you succumb to them and then let them have the money, and then you build up. It gets to the lintel level where you have to roof, they come for roofing fee. If you don't pay, that's another different ballgame altogether.
Wow.
And so when I get to hear committees and what have you, it breaks my heart. Look, we have a minister for the interior, we have a national security minister, we have the BNI, we have the CID, we have whatnot. I'm a barracks boy, and I always pride myself in that. What happened to intelligence gathering? Is the minister, and by extension, with all apologies to the president, telling us that they do not know where these people are?
That brings up the issue of some of the security agencies being complicit in this issue. There have been a lot of allegations about how the police are either overwhelmed or are in bed with these people. So that's also an argument that's there. But in your interaction with these people, these land guards, do you get the feeling, do you get the indication that they could be supported by some sort of powerful state agencies or security agencies?
Let me state on record that there are people who are career land guards. You know, that's what they do. That's all they do. And remember that the exit of the former CID boss, Brian Tudor, had to do with some issues related like to land guard. So there are also policemen, military men, and all of that who own lands themselves, who use these land guards, aside the chiefs and other people who would employ these people and use them. Now, it beats my imagination to say that, well, we're forming committees and all of that. I think it's just hogwash, and we're trying to whitewash the situation. I think that our security...
I mean, in all fairness to the presidency, there is an issue. You're saying that security people are complicit. I, as a president, for example, need to put together a team.
Who is going to be part of this, the committee?
That is something that we don't know, and that is something that, you know, what some of us are expecting that will be told. But then again, there's an argument that if you look at this the situation, it's a very dire security situation. You know, so you want to take your time and be careful how you put information out there concerning who is going to be on this committee, because then there's also the issue of them being targeted some way, somehow.
Around this table, if we commit an offense, if the BNI wants us, they will pick us up before we know it. So the people who perpetrate these acts, the so-called land guards, the police, I dare any security man in this country to tell me they don't know where they are. They know where they are. They know who they are. They know who the people work for. They are just reluctant to go and pick them up. And I'm saying that they are either sleeping on the job or they are struggling to stay awake.
Isn't it the same thing? Let me bring you in, Mr. Jebi. You have any personal experiences to share? Or
I haven't, but I have witnessed them in action.
Okay.
And it's not a sight to behold. Now, my approach to everything is to really look at the origins of these things. Okay. In your report, he said the system is not working. The system is broken, and it is broken, because we have. I mean, if we go back to, you know, how the lands are, you know, the chiefs or the nananoma curators of custodians of the land, and then we have the administrative, you know,
the lands commission.
Exactly. There's a gaping hole in between, and in between there, that's what all this craziness happens. Okay, you have people that, like Johnny just rightfully said, they are career, land guards, and they are known. Okay, they are known to the security operatives, and they even use them at sometimes.
What's your level of confidence, if I should put it that way, in a committee that's been set up to deal with this issue?
I personally, it's much ado about nothing. Listen, we live in a society now that's becoming lawless by the minute. Okay, if people can get away with minor crimes, okay, violating traffic, you know, infractions here and there, and they don't get reprimanded or, you know, slap on the hand, you get emboldened to do bigger crimes. Okay, now people don't respect the police. I have had personal encounters where police tell me that they're incapable to act. I live off the Spintex Road, and I have become, if my family members and friends are watching, I've become like a traffic vigilante.
I see.
Okay, Kwame Sedu. And that's what we do now. If you go on his wall now, we take pictures of people misbehaving in their V8s with the high sirens on, and we place them on Facebook, so that, you know, it's there. You cannot say, and we're outing so many people that we're becoming targets now.
So basically, your point is that the fact that people can get away, can get away with what you're calling little
we have politicians that will call some of these guys to go and protect their parcels of land. Okay, and then when you call the security operatives to come, they just get a phone and call. That's what we do now. I put on my wall the other time, I don't know if you saw it. I said Ghanaian politicians are like trotro drivers. Okay, they know the system is broken. They know who to call. So as soon as you stop them by infract, they call. And what's the policeman call from above? They have to go. So this committee and all that we're doing, it's not going to go to anywhere.
Let's assume that it will go somewhere. I mean, let's assume that it will go somewhere. What will be your expectation of this committee as to how they should work and what sort of results you're expecting?
My expectation of this committee is just go back to the basics. Okay, we already have what's supposed to happen. Okay, the lands belong to the local traditional authorities, all that. They bring it here once it's been, you know, signed over to them. The lands commission, you know, they give you indenture and all of that. We don't need to create, well, now, like you said, we have a committee now. Let's just go back and see how this whole system is broken and restore it.
Okay. What are your suggestions, if any, of how we can deal with this problem as a country?
Well, the security agencies just have to be up and doing.
Well, okay. You think that will work?
It should. I mean, that's the only way this nation is going to work again. Because, listen, if we can't enforce the law, okay, then we don't have a nation.
Okay.
If we're going to resort to, I just read an article that President Akufo-Addo is saying the churches should help in fighting vigilantes and all of that. I mean, how do we get here? If the police cannot deal with us, you know, my personal take is, I'm not a barracks boy, but my personal take is just bring in the green guys. Okay.
What he's just saying is that there are some of these green guys who are actually own lands, who are also using these guys
green, blue,
to protect
brown,
whatever, to protect their lands as well.
Yeah.
Do you get the feeling that this is a hopeless situation, like we're really helpless? And does it create a sense of hopelessness in you?
If we say hopeless, then we might as well just throw our hands up and just give up as a nation. Okay, we still need to get going. But this committee just needs to go back and see, how is the system broken from the original, you know, setup, which there's nothing wrong with it. Okay. We just need to restore it and make sure that we have all the apparatus in there to make sure that they work. Okay,
let me find out from you, Johnny. What's your expectation of this committee will be? If you have any suggestions as to how you think that this problem could be solved, perhaps, what would that be?
Assuming without admitting that the committee will be effective, I will say that we have so many examples to learn from. You remember back in 1995 or 1996 when Kweko Ninja was, a pleasant memory, was murdered. And
it tells you just how long we've been dealing with this problem without a tangible, real, concrete solution.
But in that Kweko Ninja narrative, Kweko Ninja, if I remember, was brutally murdered and wrapped up and kept under a river. Yeah. And it had to do with land issues. And the police were able to find the body of Kweko Ninja days after it had been put there. And they were even able to find the perpetrators of this act. Yes, so I maintain that intelligence gathering is the first step. And the police, the security apparatus cannot tell us they don't have it. They have it. We have equipped them. So if they lack equipment or they lack their capacity to perform, they should tell us. But intelligence gathering should be the first. Number two, we should get commitment from all angles. The situation where you have the lands minister talking, and then you have the Minister for the Interior who oversees the activities of the police quiet, doesn't help. We must have an intersectoral, thing running. So lands, the security folks are all intertwined, and then we are getting this done. Number three, I think that the president is showing leadership, vision, and direction, but we could do a bit more, keeping an eye on it, because as far as I know, the president gets a security update every single morning. When he gets an update, if he makes it top priority on his list, we will get these things done. Because, you see, as we speak, and in the report that you showed, people build illegally in this country. Not just grabbing the land, but building illegally. Now, the local assembly goes to issue a warning, a demolition warning, and says, produce permit or stop work, blah, blah, blah. The law says after 14 days, if you don't produce the actual permit, that building should be pulled down. What happens? Sometimes you see a notice and it's taking more than a year. Sometimes you see the date changed. I have a critical example of a building at Osu, Community Connect Chase, up in Osu, called the Cake House, where the building is rickety, it has to go. So they come and indicate demolish by this date, and then that date gets due, and then they wipe it, and then they rewrite the date. And you're wondering what's been happening. It's been happening for 2 solid years. So if our people who we pay can be up and doing, we will get there. Because I always ask myself this question. When the lands minister, when the IGP, when the lands commission boss, all of them take their bath from home, have their breakfast, and tell their family and friends they're going to work, what do they go to do?
They go to work.
To do what, exactly? Because their work is to ensure that we don't sit here talking about these problems. Children have cerebral spinal meningitis. We should be talking about that, not land guards. They should wake up.
Yeah. Certainly, they should wake up. Well, let me tell you about something as part of this particular story. JoyNews, in the course of the week, also obtained documents pointing to how some 415 or 16 key personalities and organizations benefited from state lands in prime locations cheaply. Now, the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, John Peter Meu, says those lands were given away in what he calls Kelewele fashion. Now, there have been several reactions, including those from the office of former President John Kufuor and Jerry John Rawlings as well. The former CEO of the National Health Insurance Authority, Sylvester Mensah, has also rejected claims that he was a beneficiary. So has former Chief Justice Georgina Wood. Well, here's the minister again on the actions that are being pursued by government.
The President has made a declaration on how to deal with the land guard issue. It falls within your remit as the lands.
We have had several engagements with the chief. My administration have had several engagements with the chief in collaboration with the chief director. We've taught some of the areas where chiefs have titles over this land and speak to them and see how we can engage them. Currently, just recently, we were at the Osumanches Palace to have some level of engagement. So we are collaborating with the chief. I mean, the presentation of this documentary, I mean, I think it's timely because today is supposed to receive a report from the Land Commission. We put a team together to investigate some allocations of land that were done in 2013 till now. If you look at the period between 2013 to today, the number of lands that was dished out from government lands that was dished out of this country was given out like Kelewele. I mean, no man's business, you know. And so we put a committee together to look into that. The committee is here to present those reports. I think they were to do that today. So you're coming here, I don't know, it's of course significance and of course of timely. So we're working very hard, and of course we are going to examine those allocation problems and see what are the difficulties. And
we don't know under what circumstances his name came to be associated with this list, because it's not as if the former president went out to expropriate land from any person or from anybody. What has happened is that as part of his retirement benefits under the Chinrihese conditions, President Kufuor was supposed to have been resettled with a residential accommodation as well as an office accommodation. The piece of land in question is a plot that has been shown to him as where the government was going to put up the building for his residential accommodation. So that's all there is to it. He didn't go out to look for any land, or he didn't go out to ask for land. All the government has done was to show him a piece of land that they are going to put on his residential accommodation as per the Chinrihese recommendations. The way the news came out, it would appear as if he had gone out to look for land or to expropriate land from somebody, maybe even through illegal means.
Frank Ajakum speaks for the former president, John Kufuor. There, you know, he was basically responding to how the former president's name appeared on this list, because, as he says, the president was shown, this land was shown to the former president as part of his retirement package. So he doesn't see why his name should be there in the first place. Let me find out from you. I believe that this is a story that you've been following, both of you. Does it goes back basically to the Lands Commission and how they administer, or the land administration system in this country. You as a Ghana, for example, should be very you should be very angry, for example, that most of your lands, I mean, is that the reason why you have issues with so many chieftaincy disputes? Because it appears that the politicians come in and they just jump on the lands in a car.
I won't go into the chieftaincy issues, and I won't arrogate chieftaincy, speakership onto myself. But having said that, I'm making these statements as as a journalist as well.
True.
I think that most people get into or onto the political landscape with the mindset of enriching themselves and making themselves better. In fact, Harold Laswell says politics is who gets what when, and how. He didn't say why. And I think that our politicians on both sides are now telling us why they get into power. There are some of the names that have been mentioned, those who have come to say, well, I didn't benefit from it and all of that. But it doesn't negate the fact that this practice has been happening over and now. If you look at, we're talking about reorganizing the entire nation, creating new regions and blah, 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 blah. The concentration of ministries, departments and agencies is heavy in Accra. So if you get to the Osu area, the ministries area, you will find that they don't have a lot of space, and yet they all want to be crowded at that particular point. Add to that, prime lands in Accra, the Osus, the cantonments, the Labonis, and the rest, has become the toast of the elite in society. Everybody wants to live around those places. And so you find that they will rather fight for lands around those places than go to a place like Ajengutuku or Ashalaja. And the reason is simple. Anti-Shipo, once they belong to the same class, they would all want to gravitate towards the same point. And it's worrying indeed. If I live in a government bungalow, I grew up as well in cantonments. That is supposed to be a security enclave, a security installation. Go to cantonments today, where brigadiers and colonels and blah, blah, blah used to live. Go there today. Most of those homes have been sold. And you're wondering why, because there's a reason there's a cantonment, there's a security, there's a reason.
I'm waiting for you to.
There's a reason.
Okay, what's the reason?
Most people don't even understand what cantonment means. So you better be in a barrack for explain it.
So Burma Camp is where the NCOs or non-commissioned officers live, WOs, sergeants and everybody else. That's where they live. The cantonments is reserved for the commissioned officers, the generals, the colonels, and all of that.
Okay.
So that they are not supposed to be at one place with the boys, but at the sound of an alarm, they can quickly get in there.
Okay.
Today, those places have been mixed and matched with people who know jack about security, and that's a threat. So you could have a drug baron living among security people if he has a bagging device and is able to get crack information.
That's a big deal for, for national security.
That is it. Now,
just because they got the money and they've got the resources to
they
be
can
able
buy
to
it.
get it.
Or just because they have a certain political linkage.
Right.
Now, I'm saying that if property A, say, belongs to the office of the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, when I become minister, does it give me the pension to want to acquire it after I'm gone? Where does the next minister live? And it's the same thing we have done with our vehicles. You remember when the handing over was done, Johnny Osei Kofi, former Deputy Chief of Staff, came with a list. The Administrator General also had a list, and then we kept doing left, right, center. The point is, Gifty, you work here. If you're given an official vehicle, when you're leaving this institution, you will handle exactly. They know when they gave you the vehicle, what makes it.
But when the company makes it possible for me to be able to buy it if I want to, then I'll definitely take advantage of it.
Has it been made possible? If you listen to Inusaf Husseini, he says that they put the directive there, but there was no caveat.
Well, he says that when he came into power, at the time that he became the minister, there was already a long list of people waiting for lands. So what he had to do was to allow it. But then he said at some point he placed a ban on it. But when he was about getting out of office, they lifted the ban. That's
hypocrisy in the highest order. Look, Mr. Inusaf Hussein is a good friend of mine, but he's also a lawyer. He knows the law, and sometimes it beats my imagination how parliamentarians and lawyers, the very people who will draft the bill before it gets to Parliament, the very people who will assent onto the bill and say that let it become law, the very people will break the law and come back to us. Look at the narrative, Kelewele and Toffee. and they're watering down the relevance of the thing. Issues. It breaks my heart. And it is not just, look, it works all the way to the top. Everybody who gets into a political office wants to own something that belongs to the state. If Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had done the same, would we have had some of these things to pride ourselves in. I think it's a shame, it's embarrassing, it's disingenuous, it's absurd, and everybody who has benefited from this should bow down their heads in shame.
But you see, there's also land available. The land's available. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources has said that there is a redevelopment plan of sort, where if there's someone who works at the ministry and they need a place to live, that you allocate some of these lands to them so that they'll be able to stay closer to their office. I mean, I don't know how. Perhaps that is a source, perhaps, of this problem.
Permanently, no.
The way he says
it is never look, it is never permanent. So today, I still struggle to understand why the SNIT flats, for example, will be built and sold to people. People own them now. It doesn't happen. You've traveled outside. It doesn't happen like that. A flat is a flat. You move in. When your time is out, you move out. It's that simple. If you can afford it, you pay for it. There's affordable housing. Can you imagine that SNIT puts up buildings supposed to be affordable for us who contribute to SNIT, and yet we can't even afford it? Those who contribute for the buildings to be put up, cannot afford it. And yet those who don't contribute a dime are actually able to afford it. It's an upside down republic.
Upside down republic, you say. Let me bring you in, Mr. Debbie, on this. What are your initial thoughts? When I'm done with you on that, so we'll find out what our expectations should be. Because there is another committee to look into the matter.
You know, people joke and say konum tea. Because eventually that's what they end up doing. They go in there and, you know, pour tea for each other and break bread and all of that. And when they come back with nothing. You know, we have a problem where if you look at Accra, we haven't added on to Accra. Okay? It looks like we've done something to Accra, but we haven't done anything to Accra. If you look at how the center of Accra was developed, okay, and Johnny went as far as breaking down where cantonments is and all of that, they were segmented in a way that made sense. The road network at the time was so built in with security in mind, okay? We've added on buildings, high rises and all of that, but never added on anything to Accra. And that's why it's congested, okay? So we've built a city that's like, what? Almost a century old. In the mornings, everybody's going one direction. In the evening, everybody's coming the other direction. Okay? So we're struggling to get closer to where Accra is supposed to be, the beautiful Accra. A friend of mine, Scoffrey, showed me a picture of, topographical picture of Accra. And I wept.
Why?
The streams. I'm way older than you, so when was the last time you saw a free-flowing stream in Accra? Was the last time. There were so many streams and rivers that people could just go and fish out of them. What have we done to them?
This was how many years ago?
Well, what, 20 years ago?
I see.
Look,
you know,
sorry about that. You know this location where we are. The street is called Fanofa. It is Fanofa River, top river.
Okay.
Okay. There's Odo Ikomi. There is Jo Wulu, there's Tesano. So all the names are relevant. So there's supposed to be a tributary, a meeting of streams,
rivers,
okay, that goes all the way
and
into
they flow into the ocean.
Odo River. Where is it?
We're dredging.
But see, that's what the problem is.
Dredging.
So we're building on. I mean, and it's usually it's the high and mighty, because they have the monies to fill these places. I mean, I live off the Spintex, I was telling you, and it breaks my heart to see that we're still filling the. You see that papaya, la galette. We're filling, and you know, nature is such a beautiful thing. Over time, it's going to reclaim everything. Maybe not in our lifetime, and maybe that's when we're waiting for the apocalypse or something to happen. Because listen, when it rains, you see a little gutter, because we've turned them all into gutters, and people drown in them. Okay, and it's because they are streams, they are rivers, and we're trying to take over them. Nature doesn't need us; we need nature. So unless we wake up and realize that all of these things that we're doing amount to nothing, okay, we're just going to keep building upon building. Listen.
Do you have any hope in the committee that has been set up. The minister says there's been a committee looking into the names. The names, I mean, of the 416 names that we're looking at, they're spanning from the year 2009 through to 2016. We're looking at about roughly, it seems that the NDC pretty much dominates, you know, the period, if you do look at it critically. But there are still some people within the NPP whose names are found in their organizations, state organizations, NGOs, etc. The committee, according to Inusaf Husseini, for him, he thinks that if a committee has been set up by this minister, then they'll probably be biased in their work. Do you have any special expectation?
This is where we lose the plot as a nation, where we start playing partisan ping pong. Okay, MPP, there's NDC, that. Let's look at the import of, you know, the substance of the issue. Okay, some of these things, or these gratuities and all that, dates back when we were trying to build a budding nation. So, like, you know, Kwame Nkrumah and his wisdom to like, okay, let's put in these incentives so that we can attract, you know, the creme de la creme in the diaspora to come back home.
So the conditions have basically changed. But
exactly.
We're still
you know, like we're still
to the former arrangements.
We need to go beyond that. And if we're really serious about building a nation for the future, see, we need to go in there with, okay, we want to change Ghana. Don't go in there and come out and say, oh, it's not me. You know what I'm saying? That's how we do it. Oh, it's not me. I mean, I wouldn't have taken it, but hey, I mean, they say I should take it, so I'm taking it. You know, so when do we make that break and change it?
But those who say they bought it, I've forgotten which particular organization, one of these CSOs, they said that they bought it. They paid a lot of money for it. I mean, you can't blame them. They bought the land. They saw a land. They went through the right processes. I mean, these people whose names have been mentioned,
they went through the processes, not the right processes. The processes.
No, you know, the processes are right. they went through the right processes. No, seriously. Seriously, those people who are on the list have done no wrong. Have they? It's a morality. It's an issue of it's an issue of morals, not much more of morals than legal wrongdoing.
Well, it is. Okay, when we go back to Jay Kobichabit's purchase of that thing and all of that, I mean, we were all up in arms, and you know, but the whole thing about it has to look good. I mean, this is what we do. We and I always make, it's not a joke, I always make this statement. We hide behind books. We hide behind the Bible, we hide behind the Constitution. Oh, the Constitution says this. So, I mean, I wouldn't have done it, but listen, it's the law. But see, morality, okay, when it comes to, like, in the court system and all, when it gets to a certain situation, the judge has to step in and say, you know what, this is what the law says. But in the interest of society or the nation, I'm going to come in and use my moral judgment and do it.
Do you have any hope in the committee to be able to?
Well, I'm the hopeless optimist, so I always have hope.
Okay, that's
so
great.
let's see what comes out of it. But hey, we've seen so many of these committees, and you know, and that's why people are joking that they're committees.
Okay,
you know?
Johnny, your own thoughts about the committee?
I'm casting my mind back to when Mr. Inusaf Husseini got into office. He took an oath, and it was to protect all of us, and including that. Then he said he saw the requests, and even though some of them were wrong, he had to let it go because the request had been there. So he took an oath to do one thing, and he's a lawyer, so he understood the letter and the spirit of the oath. He got in there and did an Aisi Boating. and then you're wondering what exactly we elect people for, whether we elect them to manage or mismanage our affairs. Now we're being told that if Mr. Mewu sets up the committee, then they will be biased. I'm not surprised at all that out of the 460 names we have there, we have more NDC people. If it changes, if power changes hands, you'll find more MPP people in there. That's what they do to us. That's what they've been doing to us all this while. Fraud vitiates all. If you went through the process and the process was fraudulent.
Why would it be fraudulent? I found the land. A piece of land.
You found a piece of land.
I went to that belongs to the government.
Does the land
or the state? It belongs to the state.
Earmarked for what project?
For redevelopment, according to the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources.
What did you acquire the land for?
I mean, some of them are state agencies. Some of them are NGOs. Some of them are CSOs.
It doesn't in any way. Land X is available. It belongs to the government. You're a state agency, you're an NGO, whatever. The land has been earmarked for a particular project. You have gone through the so-called processes to acquire the land. What did you acquire the land for? And who did you acquire the land from?
It's actually a lot of names, to be honest.
So I'm just asking those people who say they went through the process, they paid a lot of money. They should answer these simple questions.
What they use the land for?
Yes, the land is available. It is for government. It's been earmarked for something. You say you went through the process to acquire it. Number one, who did you acquire it from? What did you acquire it for? What are you using it for at the moment? Then we will be able to start the conversation from that point. I don't care if you paid, it cost you an arm and a leg. The point is that these lands, and as we said right from the start, these lands belong to the locals, the chiefs. The lands are acquired from them by government for a specific purpose. And the same law that gives the government the right to acquire these lands says if the lands are acquired for a certain purpose and is not used for that particular purpose over a period of time. Beautiful. So if that period elapses and somebody knowing very well the legal lacuna goes back to acquire the land, is it not fraudulent? Fraud vitiates all.
You know, this land issue.
So if you are there and you acquire the land, I don't care how much you pay. No, look, if I can't sell what I don't own to you, I can't sell it to you. So why would anybody buy what somebody doesn't own and say that I bought it? You bought it, and so what?
The government owned it. At the time
last week, there was a call out to all students of Achimota School.
Right.
To meet up and
because
their school lands are being
encroached.
You know, and why? Because you're an authority, and you know, why do we do that?
Even the Achimota forest is being encroached. And all those ones belong to government.
Is there a way that you think, for example, the media within the media, the media can incite some kind of conversation that can help deal with it? Is this a possibility, you think?
Well, I think that there's a possibility. There's a possibility to the extent that the politicians, those in authority, will bow to the dictates. How long hasn't the media spoken about Mr. George A.C. Boateng? He goofed. Look, the man took an oath. He got a slice of the president's power. Even the president, weeks after the man made that unfortunate statement, whether it was to party people or not, the president assured everybody else that he will be father for all. Up to date, there have been calls for the man to leave because...
But he's still there?
Yes, but he's still there. So we can make all the noise we want to make. But if those who have to take the decision do not take the decision, we will go nowhere. So Mr. John Peter Mewu can set up
more of a sustained effort. Now, if you advocacy, for example, takes a long time. It's for the long term most of the time. So it's a sustained effort that brings any result.
I'll give you a typical example. Galamsey and John Peter Mewu is at the forefront. We started off with an ultimatum. It went dead. We started, or we extended it, and then we started the Operation Vanguard. Today, as we speak, there are people who still do illegal mining.
But at least there are people who have stopped.
It doesn't negate the fact that illegal mining is there.
There are people who have stopped, and the Brim River, we understand, is getting better, looking better. It can
get better, but the mercury will still be in there. And it doesn't negate the fact that people still do illegal mining, in spite of the sustained effort and how much money we are voting into it. And it doesn't also negate the fact that Mr. John Peter Mewu, the Interior Minister, the Defense Minister, those who form the Vanguard, the President, they know where these illegal miners are. They know who they are. In fact, we have been told that on both sides of the political divide, people get monies from these pits and sponsor their political enterprise.
So the point is that it doesn't matter how far, how much
sustained,
you speak.
how loud you speak. The people who the buck stop with must get up and act.
And if they don't act, then what? It's the same media that ought to speak.
Like, Gifty, let me help with that.
Togo situation.
Let me help
where
with
the people get onto the street and it gets bloody. We're a democratic society, and these are some of the prices that we have to pay for it.
But in the democratic society, when people speak and they expect to be heard and they're not heard, and it happens over and over and over again, that you could have some of these. But I think
we can only wait for an election.
Well, I think that the media can do a lot more.
Of course, I strongly believe the media can play a big part in it, because this whole Galamsey thing, I think, was when it really got tracks was when, was it Ken Ashibe?
Right. There was a coalition.
He actually, and there was a forum, and he actually stood up and said to the minister, it's like, no, Mr. Minister, we need to stop it now. Okay, we need to stop it now. And that's when it actually got traction and it started moving. I think the media can do a lot in this nation, being that we're the fourth or the fifth estate or whatever. When we specialize, okay, in our media practice. So you have someone that specializes in mining, specializes in pharmaceuticals, specializes in that. So all they do is they go out there and research or investigate into these issues, and that's all they do. So there's a sustained effort there when every time that's all they do. But we have this situation where we're just going to talk about this for, oh, there's a list of 400 or whatever. Something else comes up, and it's like, you know, my uncle, former chief of staff, I hear he said one time that, oh, when by noon, that's
true, I agree.
Yeah, it's that's how we do. The media, and we always want the sensational stuff that we're going to get the viewership or the listenership. We don't really want to build, you know, and some of us get, you know, a lot of flack because you want to do something that I always tell people that when I'm going to production, I want something that has a longer shelf life. Okay, so we do a program or production or whatever. I want it to be relevant next year. Okay, 10 years down the line, you pop the video in and you play like, wow, it makes sense. It still resonates to the time. You don't have to be as transient as the Ghanaian media now is so transient. It moves faster than Facebook.
So you think that
specializing, you know, we specialize in sectors or industries and all sustain exactly. And that's, you know,
we'll have to move away from this
move on.
Topic. So let this be your final thoughts.
30 seconds for me. So if the media will have any power at all, then we're talking about the Right to Information Bill. Look, if we had information about these things, if we, for example, knew that there were some 460 and Mr. Inus Husseini said, oh, I saw the list and I had to allow that, but at a point I had to let it stop and he didn't put a caveat, some of these things will stop. The same people who will now mention and say that the media is not being as active as it must be are the people in Parliament. We urge them to pass the Right to Information Bill.
Okay.
And as Occupy Ghana said, they should.
It's a grandma.
It's a grandma
law.
Great grandma.
Great grandma law. But hopefully we'll see something.